So my name's Aidan. I don't know. I know some people on this call, but not everyone. So my name's Aidan. I've been a member of the lay community for my whole life, and I was really honoured to be invited to share a bit of my experience of caring for humanity and what that means for me and how I do that. So I'm going to talk for maybe 20 minutes. We'll see exactly what happens. Um, but just by way of sort of introduction, we all sort of care for humanity in different ways, and that can come to light in different ways for each one of us. But my experience at the moment is that I care for humanity through my paid work, and I wanted to sort of acknowledge at the beginning that that's a huge privilege, and that I know not everyone shares the privilege of being able to do work that is caring. So I'm very grateful for that. So the work that I do is for a charity called Handcrafted. It's a Christian charity in the northeast of England, and we connect with people who are excluded from society for a variety of reasons. And our aim is to empower them to turn their own lives around. And we do that through providing support, housing, various different types of training and opportunities to those people. So that's kind of the strap line. But I want to talk about some of what we do and what that means to me, the the motivation that I have for that, and how I feel that it's a type of vocation. And I'll talk a little bit about how I maintain how I keep going because it can be quite difficult work. And so what keeps me going through that? How do I sustain it? And I hope that there'll be some things that resonate with people. If it's not clear, then please ask loads of questions at the end, and I'll be happy to answer those. Or we can have a conversation another time. Also very happy to do that. So yeah, so as I said before, so we're a Christian charity. We're connecting with people who've fallen through the gaps, who often no one else will work with for a variety of reasons. And so they may be homeless, they may have experience with addictions of all sorts. They may have suffered from violence or abuse of one kind or another. They may be fleeing from somewhere that's not safe. They might have done something that was, really a bad thing, and so they might have experienced the justice system. Um, they might have physical or mental disabilities or learning difficulties, and more often than not, the people that we're working with will be facing more than one of those challenges. And that can mean that they have quite complicated lives, and that is often why more established organizations and sort of statutory bodies find it quite hard to engage with them and quite hard to empower them to be able to improve their lives. So what we sort of specialize in and what we've learned over the years that we've been going as a charity is how do we engage with these people, and how do we help them to take charge of their own futures? And I'm going to get into why that's important in a little bit. But just to give a kind of picture of what it looks like on the ground and the way we do that. So we have four community hubs in the northeast. So in Durham, Chesterley Street, Gateshead, and Sunderland. And each of these is a warm and safe space where we run training and creative activities. There's a social space. We provide hot meals for people. Um, and there's a variety of things that go on there. So, for example, in Gateshead, we have a community cafe, a carpentry workshop, a recycled plastic facility, and we also have some housing on the top floor of the building. And so there's a huge number of things that happen in that space. And each of those community hubs has housing that is a bit like a spider's web, I guess. It's sort of spread out in the local area, but always within easy access. And so it feels like a network. And people are, connected in, and that there's a safe place that they can meet with other people, but they also have, if we're supporting them with housing, they have their own space that they can take ownership of themselves, that is their home. We also have a team called Engage, and they work specifically with young people. So that might be either unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. So these are 16 and 17-year-olds who have fled across the world from countries like Vietnam or Ethiopia, and many others besides, just to give a couple of examples. And they're often fleeing from very unstable situations, and quite dangerous situations, but they've also made really traumatizing and dangerous journeys to get here. Um, and there's a lot sort of to unpack in their experience. And so they can be they face many challenges, and so they need quite a specialist approach. And that team, the Engage team, also work with children who have recently left the care system or who are coming towards the end of their time in the care system. And so we're trying to help them transition into adult life in a way that's smooth and well supported. And we also have some specialist women's work, because we've got staff who have sort of first-hand experience of many of the challenges that the women that we work with are facing. So including things like domestic violence, in particular. And so we're able to build really good connections with women, and build positive relationships with them. Women who live in the community in towns and cities, but also women who are in prison and who are approaching the time when they'll be released. And so both of those specialist teams, the engaged team that work with young people and the women's team, are trying to help people to transition from one type of support into another, more independent life, without sort of coming off a cliff edge in between. And the part of Handcrafted that I work in specifically is the Sunderland hub. So that's one of our community hubs. It's quite new. We've been in Sunderland for just over a year. So for me, it's been an experience of building a positive community from the ground upwards. And we've been lucky to have the really strong and faithful support of the local church in Sunderland, and genuinely couldn't have done what we've achieved there without them. But it's helped me to reflect on what are the key ingredients of a positive community, because having that blank slate and being able to sort of say, oh, this is my community. I've got some responsibility for helping these people to build their own space where they can support each other. That's been um, a really helpful invitation for me to reflect on what I think is important. So there's a kind of practical context to what Handcrafted does, but I'd like to get it a little bit more into the things that we think are important as we care for humanity, and as we care for individual humans. So one of our really helpful frameworks that we have, is that we think there are 5 aspects of life that seem to complement each other, but together they give a kind of a holistic vision of what a good life might be. And I was reflecting on this earlier, and I think in a work context, I'm always thinking about this in terms of people that I support. But actually, this seems not to just apply to people who are marginalized and struggling and vulnerable, but also for those of us who might feel really well integrated into society. So I'm going to sort of read through these 5 different aspects of life, and I would invite you just to have a reflection and have a bit of a think about um, how these are represented in your life, and how they are contributing to your own wholeness. Um, so here we go. So the first one is living space. So somewhere safe to live that feels like home. So maybe ask yourself, what does home mean to you? And do you live somewhere that you're proud of? One of the things that's really important to us when we meet someone who's new to handcrafted and we house them is that, um, and this might sound a bit counterintuitive for a charity, but we buy everything new in their house. Um, we we used to take a lot of donations, but as we've grown, we've realized that there's a huge amount of dignity that people feel when they have, they come into a house and they have a new sofa and a new bed. And you take them shopping as you move them in, and they can choose what they want to eat. And you'll help them to do that. And we encourage them to turn their homes into somewhere that they're proud of. If they want to redecorate, then that's cool. We'll help them to do that. Um, if they want to have friends over, then we'll help them to do that if it's appropriate. Um, so it's all about the dignity of having somewhere that feels like it's yours, and somewhere that you can invite someone into. And when I go round to support my residents, one of them, will make me a cup of tea, and he usually makes me some pancakes as well. And for me, that's a real sort of joy to be invited into his space. And I feel that, I feel proud of him that he feels that he can invite me into that and that he's got something to offer me in that space. So the second aspect is using time. So this is about having something meaningful and productive to do each day. And so maybe ask yourself, what do you do that's meaningful? How do you meaningfully spend your time? For the people that we're working with at Handcrafted, part of the point of our community hubs is that there are activities always going on there, and it might be the key activities that we offer are woodwork and catering training, so cooking, but we also are doing life skills training, English as a second language, digital skills, craft groups. There are a huge number of things, and um, that means that people have something that they can come and join in with. And one of the um, one of the important aspects of that is that we're not really interested in making things to sell, or having a kind of production flavor to it. But people come in and they have their own ideas, and they say, "I want to make this," um, and then they can make that, and we'll facilitate that and help them to work out how they might do that. And then at the end, when they've finished, they can take it home, and it's theirs, and they've got that. It's something that they own and that they can be proud of, and they can show people and say, I didn't think I could do anything, but I made this myself. The third aspect is social life, positive connections with people. So who in your life stands shoulder to shoulder with you, and who supports you when things get really rough? Our community hubs, we aim for them to be really positive spaces where people can be building relationships with each other, lifting each other up, but also within the support work that we provide. Sometimes we can help people in really practical ways, and we can help them to solve their problems. And sometimes we have to just stand with them and say, I'm sorry that's happened. That's really difficult. And how are we going to deal with it? We might not be able to avoid all the difficulties, and that's not really the point. Um, but how are we going to cope when they happen? The next one is self-confidence. And this is so important for what Handcrafted believes about empowering people. But it's about trusting in your own abilities. What are your strengths, and what do you have to offer to other people? So one of the things that we believe that's really important to us is that everybody has something to offer. And sometimes these things come a bit disguised, and someone might do something that seems like it's actually quite horrific. And um, there's a bit of a tension in recognizing that might have threatened or harmed somebody else. But it's that person has found a practical response to something challenging that they're facing, and that there is a strength in there that we can encourage them to use in a more positive way. So even when things look really, really tough and people are sort of acting out, and you might say, um, we that's an opportunity for them to learn about their own strengths and to learn about how to use those strengths in ways that are appropriate and that are helpful to them and to others around them. And they can build that self-confidence to do that. That ties in quite nicely to the final sort of aspect of people's lives, which is coping strategies or resilience. So what will you do when life throws something hard and unexpected at you, or when you trip over something from your past? How will you cope with that? And this is a bit about having a really strong foundation in those first four aspects. Because if you've got something that's really solid and reliable, and you've got people around you who you can rely on, then you're less likely to turn to really negative cycles or really self-destructive behaviors when something really difficult happens to you. And so we're trying to help people to discover what are the positive cycles that they can do that will help them, and what are the negative traps that they might fall into and that they have fallen into in the past, and how can we help protect ourselves against those. So our aim as an organization is to empower people to take charge of all those aspects of their lives and to move from chaos towards stability. And for some people, that empowerment means that they're going to take huge steps forwards, and they might get a job, they might get their own house, they might move on from one of our properties and start living their own life. And they may come back to us in the future, and they might be working for us, or they might be able to mentor other people. And that's really fantastic. And those are the stories that are quite shiny and sparkly, and people want to give you money for that kind of thing. But sometimes empowering someone means that they're going to stay in the same house for 10 years because they've never done that before and they thought it was impossible. And lots of other people have told them that they'll never do it again and that they'll never be able to maintain a tenancy. And so sometimes progress looks like what we probably think progress is, moving forwards, moving upwards. And sometimes it means staying right where I am and not being completely chaotic, not being tossed around by the waves of the storms. And that's one of the narratives that we have that is it's really hard for people to understand, because um, it doesn't really make sense, in the way that our society works. We always want to be moving forwards. Let's get the next thing. Let's grow. Let's get bigger. Let's get faster. And sometimes just being able to be stable is more important than that. Um, so I think the concept of empowerment, it seems to be within the world of sort of social justice and helping people and caring for humanity. It's becoming a bit more popular and people understand it a bit better. And we've got those phrases that we all know, like give someone a fish and they can eat for a day, teach them to fish and they can eat for their whole life. Um, it's a little bit sort of trite to say things like that, but actually, for the people who are the most marginalized in society, even within, within the UK, empowerment is really vital, specifically for them, because for so long, as they've been engaging with all these other services that are helping them, um, they've had other people who are in charge of the narrative of their lives. Other people are determining what they are and aren't capable of, or demanding that they retell their own sort of traumatizing stories again and again every time they get referred to a new service. And people write them off completely and will say, you're just going to keep going on like this forever, or it'll kill you, you know. And it can be really negative, and it can really destroy people's sense of ownership of their own self. Um, and that's not what we're about at all. That's the opposite of where we want to go. We believe that people are the experts, the only expert, in fact, in their own life and experience. And the reason for that is all to do with what I've titled my talk, and it's also the sort of motto of Handcrafted, which is a hope and a future. And that comes from Jeremiah chapter 29. And in my generation at least, that's a really popular verse, Jeremiah 29, verse 11. And people sort of single out that verse and they'll get a sticker and put it on their laptop or, this type of thing, put it in the back window of your car. Um, and I imagine it's been popular in many generations as well. But we believe that that's true of everyone that we work with, that they have a hope and a future. And so if we give that one verse a little bit more context, then there's a bit more substance to it. Um, I probably don't have time to read the whole passage because I think I'm running a bit short of time. But um, the context around this is that God is speaking to the people who are in exile. They've been put into a foreign land and they're not part of that society at all. And God doesn't promise that he's going to rescue them from that situation, but actually just encourages them to remain faithful, and to continue to have that belief that there is a hope and there's a future and that there's a better vision of what might be possible for them. Um, God's promise is that there are other people around them who are trying to get them to dream all these things and follow false gods and have all these other narratives. But actually, God has a plan, and it's a better hope and a better future for them. And God invites them to take charge of their current situation. He invites them to build houses and live in them, and to plant gardens and eat the fruit that is grown in those gardens. To take charge of where they are now, take some responsibility for where you are, and then you can believe in a different future for yourself. And that's why we care about empowerment, and that's kind of what I want you to hear really, is that when we're caring for other people, my experience of it is that empowering them to do things for themselves, to own where they are now, to own what they've done in the past, and to have their own plans, their own future that they have decided for themselves. This is what I want to do. This is where I can go. Um, this is who I want to spend my time with. This is what I want to be doing with my life. And then we can help them to see, you know, how that's practically going to happen. But um, empowering people to have that for themselves, to have ownership of something and to have ownership of their whole identity. That's so important. And so just to sort of finish off, I wanted to sort of talk a little bit about how you sustain that because it sounds very positive and um, in some ways it sounds quite idealistic. But the truth of it is that that can be really difficult because people will tell you one day, um, I want to get completely clean of this drug. And then the next day they'll tell you, um, I got paid yesterday and I spent all my money in one go on that thing that yesterday I told you I was going to never touch again. And that's quite hard. Um, so sometimes people have this amazing vision for themselves, but it always just seems a little bit out of reach. And so something that I find really helpful for me that I think is quite Benedictine in a way, is around that concept of prayer and work and your work sort of being your prayer. And I think that's part of what it means to be a lay Benedictine. To be a person who has an occupation or does something with their time that isn't being in a monastery. And that is your prayer. And so when things get really tough with the people I'm supporting, and I'm sat there planning, what am I going to do with this person? I often find I just need to pause and approach from this kind of perspective that it seems really hopeless at the moment, but I believe that there's a better future for this person, even if they can't see that for themselves at the moment, or even if they could see it, but they've kind of lost sight of it, or they've something is blocking their view. And so I want to see that this person as they are now and as they might be in the future in the best possible light. I want to have the best possible regard for that person, see them with the same regard that God sees them. Because if I can see them through those eyes, then that's how it unlocks being able to see the plans and the hope and the future that God has for that person. And when we're in these tough situations, that's not something I can just do. I mean, I can't just imagine, oh, it's fine tomorrow, he'll be sober forever. Um, it's not quite that simple. And being able to imagine that future for people and being able to have that vision and hold on to the tiniest shred of hope for them is something that is only possible in the spirit. And that just tells me that it's a kind of prayer to sit and think about someone and imagine a different future for them. That's a kind of prayer. Or even better, to sit with them, to sit next to them and help them to imagine that future for themselves. That's a kind of prayer. And um, it's an absolute privilege to be able to do that with people and to be able to share that time with them as they come to understand themselves and come to understand what might be possible for them. And so even in the toughest moments when someone has that tiny shred of hope that they think this could be different and I can make that happen for myself, that's what helps me to keep going. That's all I've got time to share, but I think there's a little bit of time for questions.
Yeah. Thank you ever so much, Aidan. So I'm going to unpin you for the moment and see we can see everybody. And we have got a bit of time for some questions. If you want to ask a question, can you use the react buttons? I think give you a hand as an option. Yes, if you want to raise, there's a raise hand thing towards the bottom of it. So if you want to ask a question, please use the raise hand. I hope I can see all of you. I think you get moved to the top anyway if you put your hand up. Is that you, Eric?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Fire
Okay.
away.
Um, it seems that your work is hugely intensive of your time, and I wondered what sort of numbers are you dealing with? what sort of ratio is there between you who are supporting and those you're supporting?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So across the whole organization, we're about nearly 50 staff now. And some of those are support workers who are visiting people's homes. Some people are facilitating activities. And we've got various administrative roles as well. And um, we have over 100 houses. So there are over about 120 people, I think, who live in our properties. But in terms of people who come along to the community hubs and who are engaged in an activity, doing woodwork or cooking or whatever, it's several hundred every year. Um, in my little corner of handcrafted in Sunderland, we're relatively new. So at the moment, I only have five residents who live in my houses. So I spend a lot of time with them. But then I've got um, about 50 people who engage in a women's group or a carpentry or cooking course.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? Yes, Adam.
Well, it's not really a question, it's more a reaction. Aidan, I'm just blown away by your talk. It was absolutely beautiful. And, we spend a lot of time together. And I just feel that this is such a wonderful opportunity to hear what it is that you do. Elizabeth asked me when she suggested that you might do it. And I gave a very vague response. I would be able to give a much better response. So I would just say thank you, Aidan. I think that it's very, very, it's wonderful what you do. And what I particularly take away from it is that your five different aspects of life have such relevance for all of us. It really does. And also the echoes of the lay community and also the rule that come through it are very, very strong. So maybe that is a question for you. You did sort of touch on it, but do you kind of sit there occasionally and think, gosh, yeah, I get a bit of support from looking at the rule at this?
Yeah, I think yeah, I could say so much more about the sort of links there. I think the key one for me is what I said about the prayer and work, but there are so many things about the way that Benedict always wants people to be doing something.
Mm.
There's a line about idleness being like the devil's work or something like that,
Enemy of the soul.
and having meaningful and productive things to do. How you spend your time is really important. But also thinking about those five aspects of life and the living space, and there's a lot about space in the Benedictine
Mm.
understanding, and that's one of the things that we see as important as a community as well, in creating holy space. So I think there are lots of lots of links there, and actually it's something that I would be very keen to sort of dig deeper into in the future.
Okay, thanks very much. Chris Walker.
Thank you very much, Aidan. Yes, I've been wondering what you've been getting up to up north since you finished your studies. Really interesting and such valuable work. You told us a bit about your own faith and how that impinges on your work, particularly helping you with resilience and getting you through the difficult times. I wondered what opportunities do the people you work with have to know about faith and that it helps you, but is it a sort of outreach type thing from a faith point of view? How does your that work in?
Yeah, so we there are always opportunities. I think one of the things that we're quite careful about is being really open and accepting of everyone, no matter what their beliefs and what their sort of worldview is. And we support people who come from a genuinely the whole range of different views about the world and different understandings. I think the key thing that we do that I think sends a real a really clear message to people is that we treat everyone with dignity and we believe in the value of everybody's life and that they have been blessed by God with strengths and things that they can offer to others. And when we consistently behave in that way towards people, they notice and lots of them then do ask us, like, hang on, what's going on here? Why don't other people treat me like this? And so that can open up really important conversations with those people. And many of them do come and try out coming to church. Some of them have become Christians. Some of them think that's really nice and I appreciate it, but I don't want to be involved. So it's a range and it is different for every person. And I one of the things that's important to me is that I wouldn't initiate one of those conversations with somebody, but I would always be open to having it if somebody asked me that question. What motivates you? Why are you doing this?
Thanks very much, Aidan.
Thank you. So we'll take one last question, which is Peter and Catherine.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think it's me rather than Catherine. Aidan, I'm a bit like Adam, really. I'm reacting rather than asking a question, but I worked in the Northeast myself for about 15 years. And from the work I was doing there, I know just how tough life can be from people on the margins in that part of the world. And I just think it's amazingly encouraging to hear about the work that you and your colleagues are doing at a time when so many services for marginalized people have just been closed down in our society and in the Northeast as well. So yeah, it's really inspiring to hear you talk about it, and I wish you every blessing and every good wish for the future of the work. And if it has a chance to grow, that would be fantastic as well. But I really resonate with your thought that actually, and I think this is true for organizations as well as people, sometimes success is just staying where you are and being able to survive where you are.
Yeah, thank you, Peter.
Well, thank you very much, Aidan. I think a lot of us found this really inspiring, and you've given us a lot to think about, actually. But I think we now need to move along to Pip, who is our next speaker. So we will.
Well, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, good evening, and well done, Aidan. I have to say that mine is going to look very thin compared with your wonderful contribution this evening.